usually festive and joyful, a typical piñata party is an event in which a whole neighborhood can participate. However, under certain conditions, there are times when such a celebration can be hijacked by dark forces and end in chaos. On a warm summer night, during a crescent moon over 20 years ago, there was one such gathering that took place in the backyard of the house where one of the local LA gang members lived. As the master of ceremony, Jose Fernandez stood by the gate to greet the incoming guests, mostly members of his gang and their girlfriends, plus a few guys who belonged to some friendly rival gangs, were welcomed in for the occasion. As the host of this party, Jose announced to the crowd that the piñata would be hoisted from the basketball hoop in the backyard, and the first chosen person, who had been blindfolded and supplied with a baseball bat, needed to step forward to take some swings. This piñata was in the shape of a donkey and was quickly suspended in the air with a long length of rope. For some reason, the object seemed heavier than a piñata usually is, and Jose needed some help getting it up in the air. Since he had been drinking quite a few mugs of beer from the party keg, he did not care too much about any inconsistency. He had a joker-sized smile on his face and encouraged the chosen gang member, who had a large bandana wrapped over his eyes, to start swinging the bat. The fellow made several attempts and swung wildly at the donkey in the air, which of course he couldn't see. He missed every time, as the crowd laughed and jeered at him. After falling over, to everyone's amusement, it became someone else's turn to take some swats at the elusive piñata. Jose's girlfriend volunteered to make her challenge and gripped the bat tightly only to fail miserably at making contact with the colorful donkey. When she tried to cheat by pulling up a corner of the blindfold to take a peek, Jose, despite being quite drunk, caught this deceitful maneuver and wagged his finger at her, while making it clear that she must be an honest player. What his sweetheart had wanted more than anything was to win the cash prize of $50, which would go to the one who would finally bust open the piñata. Unfortunately, after being unsuccessful at making contact, she had no choice but to step aside and allow the next person in line to make a try. The third individual to step forward to make his attempt at smacking down the colorful piñata was a younger fellow from one of the rival gangs. His name was Ricardo, but everyone called him Richie. Richie had a great sense of humor and was always telling jokes. As he was escorted to the donkey figure with bat in hand, he had many of the other members laughing intensely. After his first two swings, like the two contestants who had gone before him, he made no impact on the bobbing piñata. Then, to great surprise, Richie, on his third try, was the one who was finally able to whack the ornament, shredding it into confetti. Normally, piñatas are stuffed with pieces of candy and small toys, so the joyous drunken party-goers, when they realized that the piñata had been burst apart, rushed in to scoop up all the goodies. Most of them grew up in households where piñatas were a mainstay at birthday parties, especially for children. However, to their absolute shock and horror, they found out that among the pieces of candy, there were some much heavier objects that had fallen out of the mangled donkey figurine and were rolling in all directions. At least 11 bloody severed heads had been hidden inside the piñata, and Jose could recognize some of the members of his own gang as victims of this terrible deed. He knew in a heartbeat that this was an act of revenge by his enemies, who had somehow been able to carry out such brutality. The piñata party had been totally ruined. The dance of the piñata came down through history, originating more than 700 years ago from the Spanish tradition. Christmas and birthday parties in particular were often the usual setting for this joyful custom. For my family, there is a certain case in which a strange transformation took place at one of these celebrations. My paternal grandfather had mentioned a piñata party he had attended as a child, and will never forget the mysterious events that took place on that occasion, although some family members dispute his claims as pure imagination. In that year, the annual Christmas celebration took place at his parents' expansive rancho estates, outside of Taos, New Mexico. Hundreds of people from the families of other ranchos were also present for that event. At one edge of the hacienda, there existed a pleasant courtyard, where all the children would gather to take part in fun and games. The main event enjoyed by the kids was the piñata party, which consisted of a colorful ornament in the shape of an animal suspended by a rope, by which a person standing to the side would hoist the piñata up and down by pulling on the cord, as each child in a line would step up to be blindfolded and given a long wooden pole, then allowed the opportunity to bash open the container, which held many goodies. Since none of them could see their target, they usually failed to bust open the figurine. But finally, there would always be one successful challenger, who managed to beat the odds, sometimes with a little help, and ended up smashing the piñata into pieces with the stick, allowing for the contents to spill out. That is when the crowd of waiting children would swoop in to pick up the delicious candies and colorful toys. As my grandfather explained, in that year things took a bad turn when the piñata, which was in the shape of a frog, suddenly came to life, when it was bludgeoned mercilessly by one blindfolded youngster. As this huge, slimy, weird creature hopped around, nipping at the kids with its big ugly mouth, full of vicious sharp teeth, the tykes scrambled away, out towards a steep bluff, located on a far edge of the estates. The person assigned to supervise the children, an 18-year-old lad, decided he would rather wander away, at the beginning of the party, to pursue a girl he was interested in. As the beast chased the frantic youngsters, there was no obvious guardian to protect them. The massive frog creature had scooped up and swallowed a small dog, a jackrabbit, and some chickens, as it lunged after the terrified children. The adults were just too far away, on the other side of the hacienda, to hear their screams. The closer the children came to the cliff edge, the more it seemed their very lives were in peril. But in earshot of these kids was a 15-year-old boy named Carlos, whose mother worked as a servant at the hacienda. There were some rumors that the woman secretly studied the black arts, but never revealed her powers to the uninitiated. Seeing the young children in danger, Carlos snatched up the cane that had been used to smash the piñata figure, and ran to head off the evil hopping frog. Once he took up his position between the monster and the tykes, he found the place where he knew an old well existed. There was a barricade around the hole, but he quickly kicked one side of it down, so he could lure the beast towards him. Working at great speed, he used the stick to draw out 3 hexagrams in the dirt, in front of him. He then took off a ring from his finger, which contained a multifaceted stone, and he fastened it to the end of the cane. He quickly lifted this staff high into the air, allowing for the setting sun to reflect its rays upon the gleaming gem in order to attract the demon. Then, he purposefully walked over to the mouth of the open well, set his 2 feet astride the gaping hole, closed his eyes, and began chanting in an unknown language. My grandfather had been nearest to Carlos, and he claims the frog creature leapt high up into the air, then came straight down over top of the lad, swallowing him whole. But as this occurred, Carlos carefully stepped into the well, and pulled the beast far down with him. The 2 vanished without a trace. A search party had been organized to descend into the well, but neither the remains of Carlos, nor that of the creature, had ever been located. The adults believed the children had just been hysterical for some reason, but they had made sure to finally fill up the exposed well with a mixture of stones and cement. My grandfather maintains that 37 children's lives, including his own, were saved that day, due to the bravery of young Carlos.